The Unquiet Storm, The Life and Legacy of Hyo Jin Moon, 1962–2008. The life of Hyo Jin Moon was defined by a profound and often painful collision, the weight of a messianic legacy set against the volatile, searching spirit of a musician who wanted nothing more than to find his own truth. As the eldest son of Reverend Myung Moon and Hyo Han, the founders of the Unification Church, Hyo Jin was born into a destiny that was never his to choose. He was the crown prince of a global religious movement, observed by millions, expected to embody the perfection of an ideal family that the world was still struggling to comprehend. Yet, to understand Hyo Jin Moon is to look past the ecclesiastical robes and the public podiums. He was a man who lived in the tension between the divine mandate of his father's mission and the raw human necessity of artistic expression. His life, which spanned 45 years, was a complex tapestry of intense devotion, severe public scrutiny, profound personal struggle, and an unwavering, if unconventional dedication to the power of music. The heaviness of birth. Born on December 3, 1962, in Seoul, South Korea, Hyo Jin entered the world during the nascent years of the Unification Church. To his parents and the community of early believers, the birth of a son to the true parents was more than a family milestone, it was a cosmic event. He was raised under the microscope of a burgeoning movement, his every childhood move interpreted as a sign of his future role as the successor to his father's vast spiritual empire. Raised mainly in the United States as the church expanded its reach in the 1970s, Hyo Jin was shielded from the life of an ordinary child. His education, his social circle, and his future were predetermined by the theological framework of the church. This early period of his life was marked by the jarring cultural displacement of a Korean boy growing up in the American suburbs, navigating the complexities of his father's fame while attempting to forge an identity of his own. The call of the Stratocaster. While his father sought to change the world through mass ceremonies and theological tracts, Hyo Jin found his language in the electric guitar. In the late 1970s and 80s, when the Unification Church was facing intense media backlash and accusations of being a cult, Hyo Jin retreated into his studio. To the outside world, his musical pursuit seemed a diversion, but to Hyo Jin, it was a lifeline. He became a prolific artist, recording hundreds of songs that spanned rock, metal, and ballad styles. His music was raw, often melancholic, and deeply personal. It was where he wrestled with the demons of his position. In his lyrics, one finds glimpses of a man crying out for authenticity. He didn't want to be the crown prince, he wanted to be heard. He built a studio, Manhattan Center in New York, which became his sanctuary. It was his way of using the resources of the church not for proselytizing, but for personal, creative catharsis. The burden of leadership. The 1980s and 90s saw Hyo Jin placed into positions of immense responsibility. He served as the president of the Collegiate Association for the Research of Principles, CARP, the church's student wing. He was often called upon to stand before thousands of young followers, delivering sermons that required him to echo the teachings of his father while trying to maintain his own sincerity. These were the years of his greatest public struggle. The pressure to conform to the expectations of his parents and the millions of followers who looked to him as a future leader became an iron cage. He married and had children, further cementing his place in the church's hierarchy, but the internal friction was building. The narrative of the perfect son became increasingly difficult to maintain in the face of his personal battles with substance abuse, as well as the emotional exhaustion of living a life that was essentially public property. The human struggle. It is impossible to write about Hyo Jin Moon without addressing the darkness that shadowed his later years. The media of the time, particularly tabloid outlets, were rarely kind. They saw him as the heir apparent to a cult and gleefully chronicled his personal shortcomings. However, these reports often lacked empathy, failing to recognize the extreme psychological pressure of being the eldest son of a figure as polarizing as Sun Myung Moon. Hyo Jin's struggles were, in many ways, the struggles of a child who never truly owned his own life. The church's intense perfectionistic culture left little room for the vulnerability and the messiness of human existence. When Hyo Jin faltered, it was not just a personal failure, it was a failure of the collective ideal. This created a cycle of shame and self-medication that he fought to overcome throughout his adult life. Yet, those who knew him personally often spoke of a man of profound sensitivity, someone who cared deeply for the underdog and who felt the pain of those around him with acute intensity. The final bow. On March 17, 2008, Hyo Jin Moon passed away suddenly from a heart attack at the age of 45. His death sent shockwaves through the Unification community. For his followers, it was a moment of profound grief. For his family, it was a tragedy that defied the theological narrative they had built around their lives. His funeral was a somber affair, a reflection on a life that had ended far too soon. In the reflections shared by those who navigated the church alongside him, he was remembered not as the crown prince or the future Messiah, but as a man who lived with his heart on his sleeve. Legacy: the musician, not the Messiah. In the years since his passing, the perception of Hyo Jin Moon has shifted. He is no longer the target of the intense theological expectations he dealt with during his life. Instead, there is a quiet appreciation for his artistic contributions. His music remains on platforms like YouTube, maintained by fans who appreciate the grit and the honesty of his sound. He left behind a body of work that serves as a diary of his struggle, a testament to a man who tried to sing his way out of the shadows cast by his father's immense light. Hyo Jin Moon's life serves as a poignant reminder of the cost of legacy. He was born into a world where everything was predetermined, yet he spent his 45 years trying to carve out a space for the individual soul. He was a son, a brother, a father, and a musician. He was a human being who occupied a space in history that few could comprehend. Ultimately, Hyo Jin's story is not one of a religious successor, but of a seeker. He sought meaning in the strings of a guitar, in the brotherhood of his fellow artists, and in the quiet, fleeting moments of grace he found away from the podiums. He remains a symbol of the tension between communal identity and individual spirit, a reminder that behind even the most mythologized lives, there is always a human heartbeat, desperate to be understood on its own terms. Note: this biography touches upon the historical and emotional landscape of Hyo Jin Moon's life. While the Unification Church holds his life in a specific theological context, this narrative focuses on the human experience of a man navigating the complexities of his unique position.